That brings us perfectly to our next session. It's a conversation about how empathy and inclusion can reframe innovation itself. There's a panel with some participants here now, so we'll just call them up on the stage one by one. And when I've called you up, you could please find your seat on the stage. Let's see. I'm thrilled to welcome up on stage here now an incredible group of leaders who bring deeply human perspectives to innovation. First up is Ben Chutz. There we have Ben, brilliant. He's a founder and a growth strategist who builds businesses rooted in empathy, co-founded Birdhouse Health, and now leads impact initiatives helping social ventures scale without losing their purpose. So welcome, Ben. Just grab one of these. Yeah. Thank you. From impact startups to digital innovation in healthcare, where empathy meets technology at scale. Dr. Edmondo Robinson, founder and CEO of Downeast Digital, and a national leader in digital health, with 25 plus years of experience transforming care, including as Chief Digital Officer at Moffitt Cancer Center. Welcome, Dr. Robinson. From transforming patient care to transforming our understanding of ability. Paul Kent, founder of Disabled Life Alliance and Executive Director of the Disabled Life Foundation. After a pioneering double amputation, he turned personal experience into a mission for systemic change. Welcome, Paul. Next, a leader who's built and scaled global technology organizations and now empowers startups and women leaders. Sushma Rajagopalan, I really hope I got that correct. A global tech leader and investor, former CEO of ITC EmpathyTech and partner at Rittenhouse Ventures, helping health tech and SaaS startups scale. Welcome up on stage, Sushma. Did I get your name correct?
You actually did brilliant.
Oh, wow. It's one more, yes, that's correct. So, rounding out our panel, a lifelong educator putting empathy into action every day. Tom Quinn, Executive Director of the Vanguard School, serving students and adults with autism since 1959. Longtime advocate for accessibility in education and the arts. Welcome, Tom. So with that, let's dive in. You ready?
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Good. Okay, just to start off, I would like to ask every one of you the same question. Why do you believe empathy and inclusion are just not nice-to-have values, but essential ingredients for meaningful innovation in our field? I start with you, Ben, since you said you were ready.
Sure. So, I always come back to this anecdote that I heard years ago about the advent of the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and how it, one of the things that it mandated was that you have automatic door openers on entrances to public places, and obviously this is for individuals who need a bit of extra assistance opening the door, but the person with the tray of coffees hits it with their elbow, or somebody like me that doesn't want to touch the button, any button in a public place. Well, it has value beyond values. It benefits the greater good.
Yep.
And what's good for the sake of inclusion is good for the sake of everybody. So I tend to look at it that way.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
See, I think innovation should be all-encompassing. When we innovate, we typically tend to look at a market need. We look at a solution that's better than everything else. And I asked myself, better than something else should also be ubiquitously applicable to all kinds of people. And I don't think, and I like the way you have framed this, right? Empathy and inclusion, right, has to be an essential component of innovation. I am looking at it from the lens of a venture capitalist who invests money. I'm also looking at it from the lens of an innovator and a co-founder and an entrepreneur, and somebody who mentors these companies. So I'm looking at it from 3 different lenses, and I think innovation should start with, how do I make sure that whatever we are innovating is applicable to the broadest swath of people?
Thank you. Tom?
That's a wonderful answer. I have to admit, as a lifelong Philadelphia fan, being in this building is just really exciting. I have my Eagle socks on today. I had to wear them today. I love that I can look around this room right now and see the word empathy everywhere. In the work that we do at my school, our staff practices that every day. Our students need that every single day. And infusing empathy in all the things that they work with is so vitally important because they are so unique and so different. And that's also true for the caregivers that are involved in that. The caregivers need that empathy all the time. It's extraordinary work and extraordinary dedication that goes into working with our students that I see, and also all adults with autism, coming at that place from empathy and actually making technology, as somebody who's not a technologist, making technology something that really emphasizes the human nature of that. Just how impactful it can be to make lives better. That can't be more empathetic. So.
Thank you. How about you, Paul?
I look at empathy as the cornerstone of curiosity, and curiosity being an essential ingredient for innovation. And when I think of innovation and empathy, they go hand in hand. They work together. Usually, as we heard just earlier, the why, right? You don't look at it with traditional metrics necessarily, but you end up, due to the fact that in the accessibility and inclusion area, it is all about solving a problem. It's not iterating on existing, it's solving a problem. That problem may have a few or many in it, and that solution typically will lend itself to a broader appeal. So I think that's, again, empathy and inclusion kind of go hand in hand.
All right. Thank you.
So the challenge with going last in a panel is all the good ideas have already been stated. So I will try not to be redundant. One, I actually am excited to be here as well in the link. My wife was on the legal team that actually financed this building. And so I've been excited about this place since before it was built. You know, as I want to kind of follow up with a couple of the first points. So there's this concept, if you haven't heard, there's this concept called reverse innovation. Have you heard this concept of reverse innovation? I don't like the term, but I like the concept. So the idea of reverse innovation actually goes back to our first speaker, which is that if you innovate in a low resource setting, then that is scalable to higher resource settings. But the reverse is not necessarily true. Okay, and resources aren't just dollars all the time, right? Resources might be accessibility, for example, right? And so innovating in the lower resource setting allows you to scale to higher resource settings. The reverse is not necessarily true. It's a concept, I think Chris Trimble and the folks at Dartmouth created a Harvard Business Review article around this. Now, I'm a little annoyed that it was an HBR article because I'm a Wharton guy, and so we have good ideas at Wharton too. But we took this concept and at Downeast Digital created something what we call the Accessibility Lab. The idea of the Accessibility Lab is that when you design products, digital products, you bring the end users of those products into the design process from the very beginning, right? So what we see often is that you create a thing and then you try to push it out there and wonder why it's not working. Because you never actually, not just ask them, involve and engage those end users in the process from the very beginning, from the conceptual concepts of the design and the development and the implementation. It's hard to do, but it's essential if you're actually going to execute in this space.
That was a very good point. Can I elaborate a bit on that? Because I think you touched like briefly on the same subject, I believe, Ben. It has an incredible power to technology to help people, but at the same time, if it's not done correctly, it has also the power to widen that gap. Yeah. So you're talking about that in your lab. What does it mean to build a digital system and to protect them rather than to replace it?
So if you're going to, you're exactly right. Let's take the example of AI, just because it's all hot and whatever, right? So, right. So and we're hearing more and more, right, that AI has, obviously it has a ton of potential, but we also know that it has part of that potential. It's just a tool. It's not good or bad, but it has the potential to increase the gaps in outcomes that we already see, right? So I'm a physician. I'm a practicing doc. And one of the things that we've been working on since I was in my fellowship training at Penn was that there are gaps in outcomes. Certain groups get certain outcomes, and other groups don't get as good outcomes. That has been true for a long time. AI has the possibility of exacerbating those gaps. But again, it's just a tool, so it also has the possibility of narrowing those gaps. What's the difference between the two? Where it lands, because again, it's just a tool. The difference is whether or not we are thoughtful about how we design the tool so that it addresses those gaps and doesn't widen the gap. You actually have to be proactive in thinking about how you use those tools, in identifying those gaps, and then being very directive about, no, this tool is going to address those gaps. So on my investing arm of Downeast Digital, we're focused on tools that are specifically designed to address those gaps, because we actually think that there's a huge market for that, and that we will build great companies along with building great products.
Is this something you would invest in?
Absolutely, yes. So most venture capitalists, right, they want to make money, all right? Nothing wrong with that, that's their business. But how you make the money is also very important. So if you look at what Rittenhouse Ventures does, we invest a lot in digital health. And you look at all digital health companies, at the end of the day, what do? They're improving quality of care to the patients. They are basically bringing down the cost of healthcare. And number 3, they are basically ensuring that people don't get back into the healthcare system because they have not adhered to the right kind of medication, or somebody has not taken them the time to explain what needs to be done. Now, technology can be very daunting to a lot of people. Think about your parents. Think about elderly relatives, right? It took people a lot of time for people to even understand how to get into this mobile world. It's going to be 20 times harder to actually live in this world of AI. And we trivialize democratizing technology. So one of the things, whether it's education, whether it's HR, whether it's digital health, there is a huge element of empathy. Now, but to be honest with you, okay, I would not have put that as the first lens, but the more I think about it, right, it eventually comes down to that empathy factor in making sure that whatever is the solution that you're investing in meets the targeted purpose and has the widest reach that is possible and the most inclusive reach that's possible.
Thank you. Can I ask you, Ben? You operate in this space as well, both building companies and at the same time trying to figure out how to finance these companies as well. What is your take on this?
I think oftentimes empathy can be confused with arrogance. And so you might see a founder operating from a self-perceived expression of empathy going into, let's say, an urban setting, an inner city, to improve literacy among K through 12 students. And they say it's broken, we need to fix it. And so they set about fixing it. But one of two outcomes comes to fruition. Either they don't make the impact that they originally set out to make, or they actually make things worse in a sort of, paradoxical kind of way. You saw this with it's the shoe company, Tom's, right? There's like the famous case study where, Tom's, buy one, give one. You buy a pair of Tom's, they donate one to a village somewhere where nobody, knows, truthfully, and people feel good about it. But the end result of that was that it disrupted the whole local economy. There were already businesses and shoemakers, and they were trying to solve this health issue, what they thought was a pressing health issue, and in the process, in their misguided empathy, masking as arrogance and thinking they could solve something that has not been solved by, they actually made the problem worse. And so there's a counter strategy that is often overlooked when it comes to innovation, which is, instead of necessarily looking for opportunities to fix what's broken, you can actually look for opportunities to improve what's working.
Correct.
And Chip and Dan Heath, these authors that you may have, some of you may have read, they talk about this in their book, Switch. It's about organizational change. They talk about focusing on the bright spots, not ignoring the bright spots. The bright spots being what's actually working that could potentially challenge your preconceived notions of what it's going to take to fix whatever problem you're trying to address. And that does not get talked about enough. And there are a lot of smart people with boots on the ground doing the work that have figured out much better ways of addressing these issues than the average, entrepreneur. Not to say anything negative about my kind, but the truth is, we need to be aware of separating empathy from arrogance and understanding from which orientation we as builders are operating from.
Yeah. So looking at the potential flip sides of what we're doing is equally important to making sure we don't create new problems with our empathy and our interest in solving things. Yeah? Okay, thank you. Right, Paul, did you have something to add to this?
I was just going to chime in on something you said about the gaps and touch upon an overused phrase of co-creation.
Yep.
And we are in the disability accessibility space, and we work with a lot of very early stage innovators and funders that are looking catalytically to support that and get it into the more traditional capital formation of venture and such as it reaches milestones as an entity. I think it's important to realize that innovation that's born out of an empathy or a lived experience, or that might not initially have the TAM, total addressable market, everybody's thinking about, but it is a technology that can be spread further. You can take the electric toothbrush, you can take Alexa, you can take all these things that started out that way. And I think it's important to look at that. And I think there's also an element that's really important in innovation around, and it's derived out of empathy and inclusion. I joke around that the only AI that really matters is accessibility and inclusion, and that's an optic we use when looking at things. A tool, it is a tool, it's another tool in the toolbox to make things come to fruition. But I think it's also important to realize that this early stage innovation, especially that's born out of empathy in areas like disability and accessibility innovation, is to be looked at as not concessionary, not impact first. They both can occur. And typically if you solve a problem, you're going to have a nice impact and you're going to have a good ROI as well. So I just want to put that out there.
Thank you. Thank you. Speaking to you, Tom.
Yeah, if I could really, just
yeah, please.
Really interesting cross-section here from, I think what this conference is about, is talking about innovation and then the boots on the ground. And I think about what you said about arrogance really comes into play in an outside program coming into a school like mine and presenting it to 240 very different students. And one of the best things about our population is how blunt they are. They'll tell you if something is working. And making sure that innovation is responsive to that actually boots on the ground experience. So that when you work with a student for the first time or with an adult, and they give you feedback that it's not working, that there's the non-arrogant approach to adjust to it. And I think that's sort of what's really interesting about this conference is that whether it's the Step Up Academy or a school like myself, there's really opportunities to come in there and try these innovations with the students that we work with, and you'll get very much real-time feedback as far as what's working and what's not.
Please.
So I love that you framed this this arrogance concept. It's great. So there's this. Really, because let's get real here. Let's not beat around the bush and be on the edge. Let's go right in on where the opportunities are and where the challenges are. So there's this concept and I'm a health services researcher. There's a concept in research training called community-based participatory research. Has anyone ever heard of this? Community-based participatory research. Okay, so that's a research concept, right? The concept around the research, this approach to research is that if you want to understand a community, you have a research question, you actually have to engage with that community, you actually have to listen to that community, you actually have to develop the questions with that community, which means that your preconceived notions may have to pivot around what the community says is important to them, and oh, by the way, they should be authors on your paper, right? And so now, take that concept and bring it to this innovation, right? Does your entire approach to how you develop your tools and your interventions change if you bring the CBPR type of concept in? You might have to pivot your idea. You might have to address a problem that they actually think is more important. You might have to focus on things that they're already good at and make them better. But you have to go into those conversations with an open enough mind to understand that the community knows what the community needs, and you may not. Even if you're part of the community, by the way, you may not fully know, right? So I just want to bring that.
Love this. I think we're now starting to touch upon the core of some of the issues here. I see you're very eager to answer that, so please.
Not answer, I just want to build on top of it, and I'm going to wear my entrepreneur hat. About a year ago, we started a company called Second Careers. The problem statement was, because of the advent of technology, there are people who are losing jobs left, right, and center. It's impacting some of the early entrants, and it's impacting people who are, let's say, 45 plus. The ability for these people to get back into the job force is going to be very, very difficult. And over the next 5 years, it's going to get compounded before new sets of jobs will arise. But there's one thing that, Paul? You're Paul? Sorry, Edmondo. One thing that Edmondo said was, we need to sort of prepare people, okay? And he used the word pivot. So one of the things we said that we need to help people either extend, pivot, or restart. That is the mantra, right, with which we approach the whole company. We have about 4,000 people on our platform world over, but listening to them, okay, because not everybody wants to necessarily pivot. Not everybody, some people are just happy being, okay, I lost my job, I don't want to do anything. they're not the right audience. But then for every one of them, there are probably hundreds who want to come back, right? So I felt that concept was very powerful and something that we are practicing, and I wanted to share it with everybody.
Sorry, I think Ben had a, and then you, Paul. Yep. Sorry, if you had a, no, please, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you know, one of the key things, and we're describing what you described, we call it social capital around the innovation. You know, it's as necessary of an ingredient as financial capital. But it all starts to kind of, I think the great thing about an empathy forward is it allows for this concept of collaboration and open sourcing. And the objective is to solve a problem. And when you start there, you usually, if you can wrap it around with, again, social capital and financial capital, you can chaperone that to success, whatever that may be at the time. I think it's a very important concept, and I think learning from research into early stage, you know, commercialization of things, and then working with traditional investors around either broadening their risk profiles, but also engaging in the acceleration of such things. It all takes collaboration.
Yeah. Good. Did you want to
Just
add to that?
very briefly, I'll close it out, this topic, by saying I want to build on what everybody here is talking about, on the ability to pivot, the ability to change, the ability to you know, possibly even start over. There is an unspoken expectation in that suggestion of you as a founder or a builder being psychologically willing to do that. And what I have found is founders end up on one of two sides of this. When faced with the question of, this isn't working, we need to change what we're doing, they either do or they don't. And what drives that decision is whether they have fallen in love with their product or whether they have fallen in love with their problem. And I think anyone on this stage who invests in companies at any level would agree that if you find that their biggest returns will always come from the founders who are in love with solving the problem, as opposed to founders who just want their product to exist. And if it doesn't work the way that we wanted it to, well, something's wrong with the people using it, or the market, or the economy, or anything but what they're doing.
So as an investor, that's the first thing that we look for. Is the entrepreneur so smitten by their own solution or the problem and forgets the fact about, is this really serving a purpose? Is this really scalable? Can I do it with the right amount of money? And can I return the investor their money in multiples higher than what they invested?
If you got more product screenshots in your deck than you have actual numbers and, you know, traction, it's an immediate no.
Coming back to that pivot thing, start with the problem, build a product. At some point, there will be some discrepancy in that you need to do some changes. It's inevitably. Those changes in this area could sometimes means, I assume anyway, that maybe moving a bit more away from what gives you most financial returns, pivoting into something that gives more social returns. I would say that could be an issue in these cases. Cool. You don't agree? That's great. Please.
I do and I don't.
Yep.
I think, again, it's about the willingness to pivot. You know, if you start with an outcome in mind, and we're fortunate that we deal with a lot of innovation that is born out of necessity, lived experience.
Yep.
many of those entrepreneurs are very much focused on the outcome they hope for, the problem solving they hope for, and are very open to everything else that goes on. So I think, you know, Tam, I'm a partner in a children's healthcare fund. It has the same kind of demographic mindset of small market, niche, all these things. You still can get a financial return on small market niche. And
Please.
I mean, so I completely agree. And I'll also add, even though you've got some venture people in the panel, venture is not always the right answer to the investment in your solution. So,
Absolutely
you know,
right. Absolutely. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, be clear what kind of money you want. But even before choosing the kind of money, you need to be clear. So you talked about pivoting to a social model when the for-profit model fails. I would run a mile from somebody who thinks like that. If you are clear about being a social venture, be a social venture and attract the right kind of capital. Don't flip, don't pivot, because that sort of makes you very unattractive, in my opinion. And VCs, and you know, they're not all bad people, you know, we are discerning. Right? We like to decide what this person is doing. So it's not that we don't care about the empathy or anything, but we are in business to make sure that we get returns and, you know. So be clear in terms of what your model is. So I agree with you.
yeah, and sorry, if you're not clear, right, the type of capital at the certain stages is critical. And what we've facilitated quite a bit is using charitable assets for that catalytic capital and that translation to commercialization that allows you to kind of sort that out. Is this more of a social enterprise, or is this truly a venture backable situation? And I think that does a lot of good for the traditional capital formation and venture and complex. And there's a lot of folks out there that want to support that.
So choose your capital model wisely as well, and who you work with. I'm sorry, I would love to speak to you all day. Actually, we have to round this off. Can I just have one last very short point from each and every one of you? Because what I've seen when working with social entrepreneurs, mostly in Norway and Scandinavia, making services and products on top of language models in order to accelerate things. We always tend to run into the issue that if we do that, these language models is not trained, they don't have the data sets in order to be specifically inclusive of all the different aspects of the people we're talking about here. So that's one aspect we need to figure out before making those services, yeah? But if I can ask each and every one of you, if you could leave the audience with one idea or one action that would make innovation more empathetic and inclusive starting tomorrow, the easy start, what would that be? Who would like to start? Please.
I'll take that. I get a couple things that nobody pivots better than educators. Every single day, every single moment, every counselor, you know that moment to moment, you have to pivot to change to that. And so the one innovation I would say from a technology standpoint is I do think, I'm not in the market capital venture of things, I'm in the service delivery part of it, but there's a lifetime of potential services in the clients that you can create if you have innovation that spans the lifespan, that not only begins with students, but also services adults, which is really the unserved area of this population. So if an innovation looks at that picture, not just what early intervention or what educational things look like, but how we service people for their lifetime, that's what I'd love to see.
Thank you.
So if I want to give you a couple of points. Number one, Philadelphia is becoming a big hub, and it is rising in its ranks in terms of being this innovation hub, whether it's technology, whether it's life sciences, biosciences. Second, the number of organizations that are available to help you, even before you start thinking about funding, incubation, ideation, mentorship for women, okay? I see a lot of women in the audience. There are people like me, and I'm just a very, very small part of it, but there is tremendous amount of rising support. Lastly, I think entrepreneurship is the ultimate leveler for most societal issues. Okay, and this is something that I hang my hat on. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Brilliant. Ben?
And I'll back that up and I'll say that the ability to strike a balance between empathy and efficiency, between a social business model and a financial business model. Without getting off on a tangent, I think there's a very strong argument to be made that that is one of the few proven ways to create sustainable impact over time. Create a market-driven model where the financial strategy reinforces the impact strategy, the social strategy, and the social and vice versa. Easier said than done. And there are professors that teach entire courses on this stuff. But like my father would always say to me from a very young age, everything in moderation. Including moderation. And I'll bring it here and say even empathy and inclusion. And I don't mean that you should only go 75% of the way towards pulling empathic and inclusive practices into your venture, but unmoderated empathy, unmoderated inclusion tends to spiral into unsustainable business practices. And if you're not aware how you're operating, what form of decision making, your particular brain, and for many of us in the room here, we operate with that empathic default orientation. We think about the social implications, the reducing harm, before we think about the economic implications, before we think about the impact on the business viability. It's not to say we won't get there, but that's not the instinctual response. So to be aware that that is our instinctual response, to recognize it, and then recognize that we have to go one step further and juxtapose it against the business viability is, I think the space could use more of that sort of discipline in our decision-making processes amongst founders and builders.
Thank you. Paul?
Yeah, I'll kind of keep it simple. I think it's about collaboration. That's what's necessary. The acceleration and incubation landscape is very fragmented. So to try, I think this is maybe a plug for EmpathyTech.
That's what we're hoping
is
for.
that this could be the center for that defragmenting the necessary resources for discipline, for building out models, for mentorship, for the right capital, all at access point. I think that's kind of what's needed. It's pretty amazing times, and I think it's EmpathyTech and what we're trying to achieve here, and with the lab, being able to get into schools and real lab-like environments with the co-creation concept would be tremendous successful. The right things will move forward. The things that are not necessarily meant to move forward, we'll learn from, and that learning and that open sourcing will be critical.
Thank you.
Anyone ever heard of a disease called retinitis pigmentosa? Okay, a couple of hands up, and I got a yes on the stage. So it's a debilitating eye disease where you progressively go blind. And I have a founder who has two daughters, two young girls, where that is the challenge. And so he asks, well, why? Why are there no solutions? Why are there no interventions for this? And he got some answers, and it's around the genetics, because it's a genetic predisposition. Well, why aren't my genetics? He asked why again and why again. It just so happens that there's actually not enough African and African diaspora genomes even in the data sets to be able to explore a solution for his children. You ask enough whys and you get to a opportunity, right? And now he set out to build the largest African diaspora genome in the world. Okay. So what I'm going to leave you with as a charge is be bold, and in order to be bold, be inquisitive so that you can be bold and actually change the world the way we need you to.
That's brilliant. Thanks very much. Thanks to all our panelists. You are free to walk off